A sick count bought an old cabin to wait for death, but there he found a young widow. Before starting this beautiful period romance story, answer me in the comments where you are listening from. I love knowing where you're joining me from. The carriage moved through the mist like a tired ghost. Inside, Count Arthur Hawthorne held onto the seat with a trembling hand. He didn't feel cold, even though frost covered the windows. What he felt was an ancient emptiness, something that neither doctors, nor friends, nor years of fortune had been able to fill. The coachman turned his head. "My lord, are you sure you wish to stay here? There are no other houses for many miles." Arthur nodded without looking at him. "Precisely why." When the carriage stopped, the wind roared between the hills. The old cabin appeared halfway up the slope with the roof partially sunken and smoke rising from the chimney. Arthur frowned. It was supposed to be abandoned. He leaned on his cane and walked slowly, dragging a clumsy step. He pushed the door open. Inside, the firelight illuminated a female face. A young woman with her hair tied back and sleeves rolled up looked at him without surprise. "Good afternoon, my lord," she said without bowing or stepping back. Arthur didn't know how to respond. "Who are you, and what are you doing on my property?" "The question could be mine," she replied. "This house belonged to my late husband. I have nowhere to go. I bought it from the notary Hensley in the village. He didn't mention anyone was still living here." She raised an eyebrow. "The living aren't asked much, my lord." Arthur observed her. Her hands were covered in flour and she wore a serene expression, as if the presence of a sick count was the least of her problems. The woman put down the bowl she was holding and added wood to the fire. "If what you seek is warmth, come closer. I don't intend to throw you out tonight. I don't need your hospitality." "You don't seem in a condition to discuss it," she said, pointing to his pallor. Arthur took a step, but a dizzy spell forced him to hold on to the wall. She moved quickly, offering him a stool and a blanket. "Don't touch me," he murmured. "Then fall to the floor if you prefer." Silence settled between them. Outside, the wind whistled through the shingles. Arthur closed his eyes for a moment, waiting for the vertigo to pass. When he opened them, he saw she was extending a cup to him. "Ginger tea. It doesn't cure, but it warms." "I don't accept favors." "I don't give them for free either," she replied. "You can leave as soon as the sun rises." Arthur drank. The bitter liquid scraped his throat, but something about that simple gesture disarmed him. "Your name?" he asked finally. "Eleanor Whitaker. And yours I already know. The newspapers spoke of you last year." He frowned. "And what do the newspapers say?" "That Count Hawthorne fell ill after losing his brother and his fortune in the same season. That he withdrew from everything." "Don't believe everything you read." "I don't, but what I see in front of me confirms part of it." Arthur pushed the cup away. "I don't need pity. I came here to be alone." "Then you arrived at the perfect place," she said, returning to her kneading table. "No one passes through these hills without a reason, not even death." "Death," Eleanor smiled barely. "She likes having an audience, my lord. I don't intend to give her one." The words pierced him more than the cold. He didn't know why, perhaps because it had been months since anyone spoke to him without measuring every phrase. He watched as the woman moved her fingers over the dough without fear, without hurry. "Do you live here alone?" he asked in a low voice. "For years." "You have no family?" "They all rest in the valley cemetery." Arthur nodded. For the first time he felt respect, not pity. He took off his soaked coat and hung it near the fire. A cough doubled his body over. Eleanor approached and held him without asking permission. "You should lie down." "I didn't come to rest." "No one comes to die awake, my lord." Arthur looked at her with a flash of fury, but found no strength to reply. She guided him to a chair, brought him a bowl of soup, and sat opposite, watching him with the calm of someone who has seen too many goodbyes. They ate in silence. The fire sparked. "What did you do in London before getting sick?" she asked suddenly. "Things that no longer matter." "Then I suppose you don't miss them." "Missing is a slow way of dying," he answered with a hoarse voice. She looked at him fixedly. "No, my lord. Dying is a slow way of forgetting." Arthur put down his spoon. "You speak like someone who doesn't fear the end." "I feared it greatly once, Now I only fear what remains if one gives up. The wind hit the door. Both looked toward the dark hallway. Arthur noticed the house had two rooms, one on each side, and a corridor disappearing toward the back. "What is back there?" he asked. "Nothing that interests you," she replied without raising her voice. "It looks like a room." It was. The Count didn't insist. He was too tired. Eleanor prepared a cot for him by the fire and extinguished the lamps. "If you hear footsteps in the night, don't be scared. It's the wind. I am not a child, and I don't know, my lord. Some men get sick before becoming adults." Arthur wanted to respond, but exhaustion overcame him. He heard her retreat to the back and a door closed softly. His breathing felt heavy. The fire cast long shadows on the ceiling. He woke up at dawn with his heart racing. Outside, sleet was falling. Everything was still, except for a faint sound. Footsteps, soft footsteps, almost barefoot, coming from the hallway. He sat up with difficulty, took his cane, and listened again. The footsteps stopped in front of the door he had seen. Then, a sigh. "Eleanor," he called in a low voice. No one answered. The Count got up, walked to the hallway, leaning his cane against the wall. The house smelled of damp wood and dried herbs. He advanced slowly, guided by the weak light of the fire. The door at the back was closed. From inside, a murmur was heard as if someone were speaking. He didn't understand the words. He knocked with his knuckles. "Are you all right?" Silence. He turned around, ready to return, when the floor creaked behind him. He spun around, but the hallway was empty. He kept moving forward, breathing agitated, chest burning. He stopped in front of the door again. The murmur had ceased. Only the wind outside could be heard. He raised his hand, touched the handle. It was cold, as if no one had used it in a long time. "Ridiculous," he murmured. He returned to his cot, though sleep did not return. At sunrise, Eleanor was already awake preparing bread. "You had a bad night," she said without looking at him. "I heard noises. The wood complains when the temperature drops." They sounded like footsteps. "Everything sounds like something when one expects to die," she replied calmly. Arthur sat in front of the fire. "You don't think me weak." "You are," she said, "but not because of the sickness, because of the habit of running away." He looked at her with a mix of irritation and admiration. "Do you always speak like this to strangers?" "Only to those who confuse their title with a shield." The day passed slowly. Arthur went out for a moment to breathe the freezing air. The landscape was harsh but pure. He went back inside with numb hands. Eleanor was waiting for him with another cup of tea. "You should stay a few more days until the weather changes." "I didn't come for that." "Then what did you come for?" "To wait." "Wait for what exactly?" "The end." She looked at him for a long time. "Those who wait for death usually give it a reason to come. Perhaps you haven't convinced it yet." Arthur didn't know what to say. "Why do you help me?" "Because one day someone helped me, and because your look is pitiful." "Pity, yes. Not that of a sick man, but of a man who doesn't know what to do with what he feels." The Count stood up, irritated. "Stop analyzing me. Then stop behaving like an enigma. I didn't bring you here to cure me. I didn't come to save you either. We only share a roof, my lord." Arthur went out to the porch. Snow began to fall again. The air burned his lungs. For an instant he thought about returning to London, to die among doctors and obedient servants, but the idea seemed unbearable. Behind him, Eleanor was talking to someone. He heard a murmur and then silence. When he turned, she was alone. "Who are you talking to?" he asked. "No one." "I heard you." "Sometimes one talks so as not to forget voices," she said, returning to the fire. Arthur observed the closed door at the back. "There is something in there." Eleanor didn't answer, she just stoked the embers. "It doesn't concern you," she said finally. "Everything that happens under this roof concerns me." "No?" "If you came to die, my lord," her tone was firm, not hostile. Arthur felt he had hit an impossible wall, but that resistance intrigued him more than any tenderness. "Why do you live here?" he insisted. "Because in small towns people get used to looking at others' sadness. Here no one sees it. Perhaps that is also dying or surviving, depending on how you look at it." The crackling of the fire filled the silence. Arthur thought that woman seemed as worn as the house, but her voice had a strength that humbled him. "And if death didn't come," he asked, "then you would have to invent another reason to stay." He smiled barely, the first sincere smile in a long time. "Maybe I will." "You don't mean it seriously?" "No, but I could." The afternoon turned into night. Eleanor offered him another blanket. "Tomorrow I will show you the creek. The water is good for soothing a cough." "Why so much kindness?" "It's not kindness, it's habit. The mountains teach that selfishness kills faster than the cold." Arthur nodded. "You aren't like the women I knew in London." "I'm not from London, nor do I need to be," she said almost with tenderness. She looked at him for a moment, surprised. "Rest, my lord. The fire will keep its place, and you?" "I have things to do." He watched her walk toward the back, take a candle, and disappear down the hallway. The door closed again. Arthur heard a creak, then a faint murmur. His heart beat fast, not knowing if from fear or curiosity. He lay down but didn't sleep. The hours passed slowly. Outside, the wind increased. At midnight, the Count opened his eyes suddenly. The fire had gone out almost completely. Everything was dark except for a line of light under the hallway door. He heard very soft footsteps, then a sound. He got up, took his cane, and advanced. The back door vibrated slightly, as if someone on the other side brushed against it. "Eleanor," he whispered. No one answered. He was about to take another step when a female voice, clear and close, pronounced his name from inside the room. Arthur stepped back with his heart pounding in his chest as if it were going to break. The voice had sounded clear, not a whisper, but his full name, pronounced with a calm that froze his blood. "Who is there?" he asked, barely audibly. "Nothing, just the wind slipping through the cracks." He stood still with his hand on the handle. The door no longer moved. He took a step back, then another. The floor creaked. The light under the door went out suddenly, as if someone had blown out the candle on the other side. Arthur breathed deeply. His body trembled, but not from fever. He returned to the fire, lit a spark with wood, and sat in front of the embers, trying to convince himself it had been his imagination. He still heard the echo of his name, so clear, so human. When dawn entered through the window, the Count hadn't slept. He got up and went out to the porch. The air smelled of damp earth. The hill was covered in frost. In the distance, a figure moved among the sheep. Eleanor. She looked up, saw him, and raised a hand in greeting. Her expression was calm, too calm. Arthur walked toward her with his cane sinking into the snow. "You shouldn't have come out," she said when he was close. "Your cough won't allow it." "I didn't come to talk about my cough." "Then what did you come to talk about?" "Last night? I heard something in the hallway." "The wind." "It wasn't the wind. Someone said my name." Eleanor bent down to check a broken fence. "Perhaps you dreamed." "I wasn't asleep." "Then you have company beyond what I can see." Arthur felt irritation rise in his throat. "Why do you insist on mocking me?" She looked at him finally. "Because I have no other way to make you be quiet, my lord." The sincerity of her tone disarmed him. He stood watching her work with the wood effortlessly, without asking for help. "You don't scare easily," he murmured. "I learned that fear doesn't serve to heat the house." They walked back together. Eleanor gave him a piece of bread and honey. "Eat. If you plan to die here, at least let it not be from hunger. You always speak of death with such lightness. When you have seen it up close, it stops seeming so solemn." Arthur left the bread on the table. "Last night there was a voice, you can't deny it." She didn't answer. She went to the fire and stirred the embers. "Drop that matter, my lord. The house keeps old sounds." "Old sounds?" "Memories. Places have them too, and you hear them sometimes, but I don't stop to interpret them." Arthur observed her for a long time. Something about her confused him. The firmness, the serenity, that way of speaking as if she had lived too long. "How old are you?" he asked suddenly. "Old enough to know there are no answers that cure, and yet you are still alive." "Yes, because someone has to light the fire every night." The day passed in a thick silence. Arthur forced himself to write in his notebook, a habit he hadn't abandoned even in sickness. He noted, "This woman does not fear loneliness. I fear her calm more than death itself." At nightfall, Eleanor prepared an herbal infusion. Drink it, she said. It will help with your chest. I don't want to sleep. It's not for sleeping. It's for relief. Arthur drank reluctantly. Where did you learn this? My mother cured the village people. She taught me before dying. What did she die of? Of winter, she replied simply. Arthur nodded without understanding. The fire illuminated the contours of her face, and for the first time he saw her differently. There was beauty in her austerity, in the way she looked without seeking approval. I don't ask you out of pity, he said. I'm just trying to understand who lives under the same roof as me. Understanding doesn't always serve, she answered. Sometimes it's better to accept. The Count leaned back in the chair and coughed. And do you accept me then? I have no choice. The roads are closed by snow. He let out a brief laugh. I don't know if that was an insult or a courtesy. Both things, perhaps. A while passed without them speaking. Eleanor sewed by the fire. Arthur watched her. The sound of the needle entering and leaving the fabric marked a hypnotic rhythm. What are you sewing? He asked. A coat for the winter. For yourself? For whoever needs it. Arthur frowned. Who could need it if only you and I are here, Bayer? She looked up for an instant. The cold doesn't ask for names, my lord. Later, while they dined, the Count returned to the topic that unsettled him. You haven't told me what is behind that door. Eleanor put down her spoon. Nor will I tell you. Why so much secrecy? Because you have no right to know. The house is mine, but the past didn't buy it. Arthur gritted his teeth. I don't like living among mysteries. Then you should have chosen another cabin. Maybe I still will. You won't. You aren't ready to return to the city yet. The certainty in her voice irritated him. And who decides when I am ready? Your body and your heart. Neither seems in condition. Silence returned. Only the crackling of the fire could be heard. Arthur didn't understand why he couldn't dominate this woman with words. She answered without fear, with the calm of someone who has nothing to lose. Night fell soon. Eleanor stood up. Tomorrow we will go down to the creek. I need to fill the barrels with clean water. You expect me to help you? No, I expect you not to die before dawn. Arthur watched her walk away down the hallway. The back door closed again. The sound of the bolt was clear. The Count sighed and lay on the cot. He didn't take long to fall into a light sleep interrupted by coughing. He dreamed of voices, one childish, another of a woman. Arthur, said the little girl, don't wake her. He woke up soaked in sweat. The fire had gone down and the window let in a thread of gray light. He didn't know if he had slept minutes or hours. He got up unsteadily and looked for a blanket. The noise came again from the hallway, a slight creak, the rustle of fabric. Arthur gripped his cane, took 2 steps, and stopped in front of the door. If there is someone there, come out. Nothing. He pushed, locked. He knocked twice. Eleanor, answer. The silence returned, only the echo of his cough. Suddenly, a soft knock from the other side, barely audible. Arthur shuddered. Who is there? The voice that answered was faint, almost a sigh. Go away, my lord. He stepped back. Eleanor? But when he opened the main door and went out into the open air, he saw her outside by the corral, feeding the sheep. He returned inside and understanding nothing. She looked at him when she entered, calm, with her hands in the wool. What are you doing awake so early? I heard... He stopped. Never mind, maybe your fever returned. The day was gray. Arthur didn't speak for hours. Eleanor worked tirelessly. She baked, cleaned, repaired. He followed her with his gaze, looking for a gesture, a sign that what happened wasn't imagination, but she gave him no reason. In the afternoon, while she hung close by the creek, Arthur approached. Last night I heard you inside the hallway. It wasn't me. Who then? Perhaps your conscience. Don't mock me. I'm not. Old houses have their own breath. It wasn't the house, it was you. You told me to go away. If I said it, I was right. This place doesn't suit you. Arthur observed her. Why do you insist that I leave? Because people who arrive looking to die always take something with them. And what could I take? My peace? She returned to work. He stood looking at her, mute. That woman challenged him with every word, and yet There was something in her voice that bound him. Back at the house, Arthur stopped in front of the portrait hanging on the main wall. It was covered in dust. He cleaned it with a handkerchief. A young couple watched him from the painting. The man in a wool suit, the woman in a simple dress, in her arms a child with a face blurred by the passage of time. When Eleanor entered, she found him looking at the picture. "Don't touch that," she said dryly. "It's you." "It was my husband and the child. Don't meddle where you aren't called." Arthur kept silent. She breathed deeply and added, "The dead deserve rest. No questions." They dined without speaking. Afterward, Eleanor placed more wood and retired to the hallway. Arthur watched her until the door closed again. He took his notebook and wrote some hurried lines. "The woman lies. There is something beyond that door, something that forces her to be silent. Last night I didn't dream. That voice exists." Past midnight, thunder shook the hill. Arthur woke up startled. The wind hit the house with fury. He ran to secure the windows. In the hallway, the closed door vibrated. He took the lamp and advanced. "Eleanor, wake up!" There was no answer. The wind roared outside, but the sound coming from the room was different. A rhythmic murmur, as if someone were praying. Arthur rested his forehead on the wood. "Who are you?" he whispered. The murmur ceased. The handle moved a little, as if someone held it from inside. Arthur took a step back, breathing agitated. At that moment, he heard a soft voice behind him, at the end of the hallway where there was no one. "Don't enter, my lord, for your own good. Don't enter." Arthur stood paralyzed, the lamp trembling in his hand. The voice had come from behind, very close, and it was feminine, but it wasn't Eleanor's. He looked toward the empty hallway. There was no one. The fire in the living room was still lit, casting shadows that danced on the walls. The wind roared outside, but inside reigned a tense, thick silence. He advanced a step. "Who spoke?" he asked without raising his voice too much. "Nothing, just the beat of the rain against the roof." Suddenly the handle moved again, this time stronger, as if someone on the other side were trying to get out. Arthur felt his heart escaping his chest. He forced himself to take another step. "Eleanor?" he called. A low moan answered like a sob. "Contained." The door stayed still. The Count stepped back and ran toward the living room with his chest burning. The cough bent him over until leaving him breathless. When he managed to recover his breath, the back door was silent again. He spent the rest of the night sitting by the fire, eyes fixed on the hallway, waiting for dawn to save him from madness. When the sun came out, the storm had ceased. Eleanor appeared from outside carrying a bucket of water and a basket with bread. "Awake so early," she commented. "I didn't expect to see you alive after so much noise." Arthur observed her with a pale face. "Where were you last night?" "Sleeping, I suppose." "You weren't in your room." "Mine is next to the barn. No one sleeps inside the house when the wind blows." "Is that so? And that door?" Eleanor stopped dead. Again with that. Someone spoke. "There is no one else here." Arthur got up with difficulty, leaning on his cane. "Swear to me you aren't hiding anyone." "I don't owe you oaths, my lord." "Then tell me, what is that room?" "A part of the past that doesn't belong to you. You can't keep pretending nothing is happening. And you can't keep looking for ghosts to avoid facing yourself." The firmness of her voice silenced him. She passed by him and left the basket on the table. "Eat something. You are so thin the wind could take you." Arthur sat down without taking his eyes off her. "You aren't afraid of me." "Why should I be? You don't have strength even to break a plate." He clenched his fists. "I'm not used to being spoken to like that." "Maybe that's why you are so alone." For a long while, nothing was heard but the noise of the fire. Arthur ate slowly in silence. Eleanor prepared infusions, cutting roots and leaves with the precision of someone who has done it 1,000 times. "What do you do exactly?" he asked. "I gather herbs, I sell them in the village when the weather permits, and with that I survive." "With that and with patience." Arthur observed her. There was a small scar on her right wrist, almost hidden under her sleeve. "What happened to you there?" "Nothing that matters," she replied without looking at him. Days passed. Arthur began to move a little more around the house, although the cough kept harassing him. In the mornings, he went out to the porch wrapped in a blanket while Eleanor worked outside. Sometimes she spoke to him of trivial things, The snow that took long to melt, the sheep that escaped, the clouds announcing another winter, but never of her past. One afternoon while she was in the corral, Arthur explored the house with the lamp lit. The air had a faint smell of dampness and dry leaves. In an instant, he found a portrait turned against the wall. He took it carefully. There were three people, a young man, Eleanor, and a small child. The woman's face had the same serenity as now, but in her eyes there was something different, a shine of hope. Arthur felt a knot in his chest, put the portrait on the table and approached the hallway. The closed door remained the same. The handle showed signs of use despite the accumulated dust. "What are you hiding?" he murmured to himself. He heard footsteps outside. Quickly he returned the portrait to its place and went back to the armchair. Eleanor entered with her face frozen by the air. "Have you been walking again?" "Just a little. I forbade you to make efforts. You also forbade me to ask. And you see, curiosity sickens more than the weather," she said, taking off her coat. Arthur looked at her with a gesture mixing tiredness and obstinacy. "Why are you still here? Could you sell this house and go to the village?" "Because there everyone remembers. Here, no one asks." "Remember what?" Eleanor looked at him with an expression he couldn't decipher. "My husband." Silence fell like a weight. Arthur didn't insist. He got up and approached the fire. "I'm sorry," he said barely audibly. "Don't apologize for what you don't understand. He died here, right?" "Yes, on a night like this." Arthur turned, surprised by the frankness. "And you keep sleeping under the same roof." "Where one loves and loses, one also learns to live," she replied without looking. The Count felt something inside him move, a compassion he hadn't felt for anyone in a long time. He must have been a lucky man. "He was," said Eleanor, and for the first time her voice trembled barely. "But fortune doesn't stop the storm." The conversation died there. She went out to get more wood, and he stayed thinking about those words. When night fell, Arthur looked at the portrait again. He couldn't help it. Something in the child's gaze reminded him of someone he couldn't quite name. That dawn, a noise woke him. It wasn't wind, it was something lighter, like the rocking of wood. He got up with his heart racing. The sound came from the hallway. The back door was ajar. Inside, something moved slowly. Arthur took a step, then another. The air was freezing. The lamp trembled in his hand. He pushed the door a little. A squeak opened it. He barely managed to see the interior. An old cradle covered by a dusty blanket. And the movement came from there, from the cradle rocking alone. Very slowly, the Count stepped back with his soul shrinking. "Eleanor," he murmured. She appeared behind him, pale with the candle in her hand. "What are you doing here?" Arthur pointed at her without being able to speak. She walked to the cradle, touched it, and the movement ceased. "You have no right to enter this place," she said with a low but firm voice. It was moving by itself. The wind passes through the crack in the roof. There was no wind. "You are tired. Go back to the fire." Arthur tried to hold her gaze. "I'm not going to pretend I didn't see this." "Then you will carry what you saw." She took him by the arm and led him back to the living room. She made him sit down. "Don't open that door again, ever. Explain to me what it means." "It means there are things that don't need explanation." "That voice, that cradle, it's your son." Eleanor closed her eyes for a second. "Don't say his name." "I didn't even mention it." "Even so, you thought it. Don't do it." Arthur breathed deeply. "Right, but you can't pretend I believe this is normal." "Nothing in this house is. That's why I came here." She walked away with the lit candle. He watched her disappear into the darkness. For hours, Arthur remained awake, listening to the creaks of the roof and the distant echo of a lament. He didn't know if it was the wind or a memory. The next morning, Eleanor wasn't there. On the table was a cup of tea already cold and a note. "Went to the village. Return at nightfall. Don't move anything." Arthur walked slowly through the house, determined to seek answers. He checked the drawers, the wardrobe, the shelves. In a box, he found a child's scarf, a small shoe, and a folded sheet. He opened it. It was a birth certificate. Father's name, Thomas Walker. Mother's name, Eleanor Walker. Son's name, William Walker. Date of death, 1 year after his birth. Arthur sat with the paper trembling in his hands. A child, a son, the voice in the night, the cradle, everything fit. He put the sheet back in the box just as he heard the creak of the gate. Eleanor had returned. "Have you been going through my things?" she asked from the door. Arthur didn't answer. "I saw you from the window," she continued. "You can't stay here if you are going to desecrate the little I have left. I only seek the truth. The truth won't help you live longer." Arthur approached with a low voice. "Then help me understand what happened to the child." Eleanor looked at him with reddened eyes. "He died," she said with a painful calm. "How?" "Winter doesn't forgive those born weak." Arthur lowered his gaze. "I'm sorry." "Don't be sorry, you didn't know him." The rest of the day was a long silence. She worked in the corral. He watched her from the window. For the first time, he understood her silence. That night, while the fire crackled, Arthur wrote in his notebook, "She lost a son. That's why she hears his voice. That's why she tends an empty cradle. I don't know if her mind broke or if there really is something else in that room, but it is clear to me that her pain is more real than my sickness." He turned off the lamp. Silence spread through the house. He lay down feeling his chest burn. At midnight, a sound woke him. It was the same as the previous night, a soft rocking, the cradle, and this time along with the movement. A cry was heard, a weak, clear cry coming from the back of the house. Arthur sat up suddenly. The crying continued soft, repeated, like the whimper of a living creature. The fire in the living room barely lit up, casting twisted shadows on the walls. The sound came from the hallway, unmistakable. "It can't be," he whispered. He took the lamp, got up with a trembling body, and advanced slowly. Every step hurt. The cane hit the wood, marking the rhythm of his breathing. The crying continued. Upon reaching the door, he saw a slit of light coming from inside. "Eleanor?" he called barely audibly. Nothing. The crying stopped. Then silence. He pushed the closed door, turned the handle locked with a key. "Eleanor?" he repeated. He heard a sigh from the other side and then footsteps moving away inside the room. Footsteps that couldn't exist. He stepped back. His chest burned. The cough bent him over until making him lose his breath. He fell to his knees. The lamp went out. A blast of cold air ran through the hallway. When he woke up, he was on the cot covered with several blankets. Eleanor was sitting beside him, grinding something in a bowl. "Don't get up," she said without looking at him. Arthur tried to speak, but his voice barely came out. "What happened?" "The fever threw you to the floor." "I heard—" "You heard nothing," she interrupted. "You only hallucinated." "It wasn't a hallucination." "My lord, don't argue. Your body can't take another night like that." Arthur closed his eyes. His head throbbed. When he opened them again, she was watching him in silence. "You know what I heard," he said with a weak voice. "What you heard belongs to another life. You can't keep living like this, and you can't keep dying like this." Eleanor gave him a cup with a bitter liquid. "Drink it." "What is it? Something for the chest?" "Don't ask any more." He obeyed. The taste burned his tongue, but warmth ran through his body. "I don't understand why you help me if you want me to leave." "Because not everyone who waits to dig deserves to do so." Arthur stared at her. Her face was tired, eyes reddened. It wasn't just grief, it was guilt. "Was it your fault?" he asked without thinking. Eleanor looked at him with a mix of anger and sadness. "Quiet." "Was that why you locked yourself here?" "Quiet, I told you. That's why you keep the cradle." She hit the table with force. "Enough!" Arthur shrank back a little, surprised by the outburst. She breathed deeply and lowered her voice. "There are things that aren't named because if you name them, they return. Sometimes returning isn't so bad," he murmured. "For you, perhaps not. I don't have strength for another loss." Silence weighed for a long while. Eleanor went back to grinding the herbs. Arthur observed her. "Did you ever think about leaving here?" "Yes." "And why didn't you?" "Because the mountain keeps what one cannot bury." Arthur wanted to say something else, but the cough interrupted him. She approached quickly, held him by the shoulders, and put a damp cloth on his forehead. "Don't strain yourself. If I don't speak, I suffocate anyway." "Then speak of something else." "Of what?" "Of London, of your family, of anything that doesn't hurt. He smiled ironically. Everything hurts, Mrs. Walker, even the silence. Then let's learn to endure it. The fever forced him to sleep. When he woke up, it was night again. Eleanor was standing by the fire, motionless, looking at the flames. Do you never sleep? He asked. I sleep when the house goes quiet. And when does that happen? Never. Arthur tried to sit up. I can't stay here without knowing the truth. She turned slowly, her shadow lengthening on the wall. For what? What would you gain from that? Maybe something you lost. Don't be arrogant, my lord. You can't return what Winter took. He looked at her fixedly. And what if Winter didn't take anything? What if it only forced you to look at what was already broken? Eleanor pressed her lips together. What do you know about being broken? Everything. I also lost what I was. You still breathe. Breathing isn't living. She approached a little more. What happened to you in London? I lost my brother. How? A fever killed him that later attacked me. The doctors say I survived by luck, but sometimes I think it was punishment. Punishment? Why? For not having loved him as I should. Eleanor looked at him in silence. For the first time, her expression changed, not of coldness, but of understanding. Then you understand, there are losses that don't heal, right? But there are wounds that become reasons to keep breathing. She looked away. You can't reason with a body that hurts. Days passed. Arthur started getting up more often, despite the cough. Eleanor let him walk a little outside. The air was cold but clean. One afternoon, while they were cutting wood, Arthur said, I've decided to stay until the snow passes. It doesn't suit you. I have nowhere else to go. You have London. London doesn't need me. Eleanor observed him. Here neither. Maybe not, but at least here no one expects me to pretend to be alive. She didn't answer. She handed him a log to cut and watched him do it. The strength in him was little, but his determination knew. That night the sky was clear. Eleanor cooked soup. Arthur ate more than usual. Thank you, he said at the end. For the soup or for the company? For both. Don't thank for what hasn't ended yet. They stayed looking at the fire. Eleanor spoke without looking up. The night he died, there was no moon, only storm. I went for help, but the road was closed. When I returned, he was no longer breathing. Arthur said nothing. The room stayed just as it was then. I couldn't touch anything. Not the cradle, not his blanket, not the letter he left me. Letter. Yes, I haven't read it. I can't. Why? Because if I read it, what little I have left of him ends. Arthur looked at her moved. He didn't know a memory could hurt so much. It hurts because it was real. Maybe you need to open that letter. Maybe I need you to stop talking about it. The conversation cut off there. Eleanor got up and put away the dishes. Arthur stayed thinking about the letter. When she went to her room, he waited a moment. Then, driven by a mix of compassion and curiosity, he got up and walked to the hallway. The door was closed, but on the floor, next to the frame, was something small, a key. Arthur picked it up, held it for a long time between his fingers. He could feel the weight of the metal, the coldness. He didn't know if she had left it on purpose or if it simply fell. He returned to his cot with the key in his hand, placed it on the table, and looked at it all night without being able to sleep. In the morning, Eleanor noticed him distracted. You didn't eat. I'm not hungry. Something worries you. Nothing I can tell you. You lie poorly, my lord. Arthur looked up. Why do you still talk to me? Because silence would sicken you faster. The rest of the day passed quietly, but in his mind the key shone like a temptation. At nightfall, while Eleanor washed clothes in the creek, he made the decision. He got up, walked toward the hallway, and, with trembling hands, introduced the key into the lock. He turned it slowly. The click resonated throughout the house. He pushed the door, but didn't enter. He just looked into the darkness. A current of freezing air came out of the room. The smell was ancient, a mix of dust and withered flowers. Arthur breathed deeply, took a step inside. The room was just as he had seen in dreams. The cradle, a chair, a small table with a folded letter on top. He didn't touch anything, just looked at the letter. His name wasn't written on it, but something told him he should read it. He took the key again and closed the door without noise. When Eleanor returned, she saw the change in his expression. "What did you do?" "Nothing," and he replied. "Don't lie to me. I found something." "What?" "A key." Eleanor paled. "Where is it?" "In my coat." "Give it back to me." "Wait, because you don't know what that key can open." Arthur looked at her fixedly. "Yes, I know." Eleanor approached slowly, extending her hand. "Give it to me, please." He handed it to her. Their fingers brushed for an instant. She put it in her pocket without saying more. The fire crackled between the two. Arthur felt he had crossed an invisible limit, one from which he could no longer return. When Eleanor retired to the hallway, he saw her disappear with the key. The door closed behind her, and then, while silence filled the house, a soft knock resonated from the back. Arthur understood immediately where it came from the same room he had just opened. The knock repeated once, twice, until getting lost in the darkness. Arthur got up with his heart racing, but didn't move. He stayed looking at the hallway, waiting for Eleanor to come out, but the door remained closed. After a few minutes, he heard footsteps, and she appeared with her face paler than ever. "Did you hear it?" he asked. Eleanor avoided his gaze. "Nothing worth hearing. You can't keep denying it. There are things that are denied by instinct, my lord." "I opened that door." She stopped. "I know, and I should have prevented it." Arthur took a step toward her. "I didn't touch anything. I only saw it. There was a letter." "That letter must not be read." "Why? Because it was written for me." "Then why do you keep it?" "Because I haven't had the courage to destroy it." Eleanor's voice trembled barely. Arthur observed her without knowing if what he felt was guilt or tenderness. "I won't read it if you don't want." "You already thought about it. That's enough." Eleanor sat in front of the fire. Her hands trembled while she prepared tea. "You don't understand what that letter contains." "Then tell me." "I can't. It was written by your husband." She nodded her head in silence. Arthur breathed deeply. "What did he tell you in it?" "Goodbye," she whispered. "Just that." The fire crackled between the two. Arthur wanted to respond but found no words. She looked up and stared at him. "You must not get any closer to that room." "I can't promise that." "Then don't expect me to take care of you." Arthur pressed his lips together. "I didn't ask you to take care of me." "You didn't do it with words. You did it with your presence." That night she spoke no more. Eleanor retired early. Arthur stayed in front of the fire, remembering the cradle, the letter, the silence. At dawn, she was already working outside. He saw her from the window, her figure outlined against the gray light. The Count went out with effort, bundled up. The air smelled of wet earth. "You shouldn't be outside," she said without turning. "I don't want to die between walls." "Nor does one die better in the open." "I don't intend to die today." "That's what you said yesterday." Arthur smiled with exhaustion. "Maybe I'm starting to doubt my decision." Eleanor looked at him sideways. "Doubt isn't living, but it's a start." They stayed quiet, listening to the nearby river. The sun barely peeked through the clouds. Arthur leaned on his cane. "Did you ever think about loving again?" "Love isn't decided," she said. "It arrives or it doesn't. And if it's already here, then it would leave me in peace." Arthur lowered his gaze. "I'm not a man who inspires peace or trust, but I still breathe. That gives me the right to try something more than waiting for death." Eleanor bent down to pick up a fallen branch. "Try it with life, not with me." They returned to the house without speaking. The atmosphere had become denser, more intimate. Arthur watched her move among the shadows preparing lunch. "I've noticed you don't eat much," he said. "I eat enough." "You don't seem to sleep either." "I don't need as much sleep as you." "Maybe that's why you can carry so much pain." Eleanor looked at him for a second. "Pain isn't carried, it's stored where it doesn't get in the way." "And you achieve that?" "Most days." Arthur smiled barely. "The days you can't, you lock yourself in that room." She left the knife on the table. "Be quiet." "I don't say it with reproach." "You have no idea what you are saying." "I do. Losing someone isn't all exclusive to you." Eleanor breathed deeply. "Don't speak as if you understood me." "I do more than you imagine." She pressed her lips together and returned to the fire. The silence lasted until the afternoon. Arthur felt exhausted but didn't want to sleep. The thought of the letter pursued him. That night, while she knitted by the fire, he broke the silence. "Let me read it." Eleanor looked at him as if he had hit her. "What does the letter say? Let me read it." "It couldn't help you understand." "I don't need to understand." "Maybe yes, maybe that's why you can't sleep." She got up, leaving the knitting on the table. "You are crossing a line, my lord. I am not your enemy. Don't treat it like a game." "I don't. But if the letter has no more power than paper, why do you fear it?" Eleanor looked at him fixedly. "Because I still don't know if I love him or hate him, and if I read it, I will have to decide." Arthur didn't know how to respond. He saw her walk away to the hallway where she disappeared. The fire kept burning slowly. 2 days passed without speaking of the subject. The tension was so dense the air weighed heavy. One morning, Arthur woke up and didn't find her. On the table was fresh bread, but the house was empty. He went out to the porch, saw footprints in the snow heading to the creek. He followed them slowly, leaning on his cane. The freezing air cut his skin. When he found her, she was kneeling, washing clothes in silence. "I thought you had left," he said. "I only came to clean." "Clean what?" "The little I have left." Arthur approached a little more. "And what would you do if I didn't return to London?" "I would keep washing. It wouldn't surprise me. Missing serves no purpose." "Sometimes yes, sometimes it kills." Arthur knelt beside her. "Eleanor, whatever that letter says, it's not going to destroy you more than you already are. Don't destroy yourself too." "I didn't come to destroy anything." "You came to die, and that destroys more than anything." Arthur kept silent. The wind blew strong. "Then teach me to live here." Eleanor looked at him with disbelief. "What do you know about living outside the salons of London?" "Nothing, but I can learn." "And for what?" "To have a reason that isn't death." She lowered her gaze. "Don't say that." "Why not?" "Because it makes me remember that I also wanted the same thing." They walked back without speaking. In the house, Arthur lit the fire. Eleanor stood looking at the flames. "I read the letter," she said suddenly. Arthur turned. "When?" "Last night." "And what did it say?" "Nothing I didn't know." "And that is?" "That he left thinking I didn't love him." Arthur observed her with a lump in his throat. "And you loved him?" "More than I understood." "Then—" She sat down exhausted. "Now I have nothing left to fear." "Then open that door." "No, not yet." Silence wrapped them again. Arthur noticed her breathing was calmer, as if the confession had lightened the weight. "Thank you for saying it." "I didn't say it for you." "Even so, I appreciate it." Eleanor looked at him. "You ask too much, but listen little." "I listen more than it seems." "Then why are you still here?" "Because here for the first time I don't feel invisible." She smiled barely, a gesture so slight it almost got lost with the smoke of the fire. "Maybe the cold clouded your head, or maybe life is calling me again." Eleanor got up and went to get water. Arthur followed her with his gaze. "And if I promise not to speak of that letter again?" "I don't believe you." "Then trust that I won't touch it." "That, maybe." Night fell. Eleanor slept in her room. Arthur stayed awake, unable to take his thought off the closed room. At midnight, he heard footsteps. They weren't hers, they came from the hallway. The Count got up carefully and took the lamp. The door was open inside. The letter was no longer on the table. "Eleanor," he called. She appeared behind him with a serene face. "Don't look for it." "What did you do with it?" "I burned it." "Why?" "Because upon reading it, I understood that he wasn't in those words." "And where is he then?" "In what I have left to live." Arthur nodded. "Then you can leave this place, maybe. But now I am not the one who needs to do it." He understood what she meant. He looked at her in silence. Eleanor smiled barely. "My lord, the fire is going out. You should add wood." Arthur took a step toward the fire, but upon turning, he noticed something strange. The cradle, empty forever, was rocking slowly as if an invisible hand rocked it. Arthur didn't look away. The cradle kept rocking very slowly without anyone touching it. Eleanor stood without moving, without saying a word. Only the fire made noise. "You see it?" he murmured. She nodded barely. Yes, but don't be afraid. How can I not be? Because fear no longer has anyone to scare. Arthur breathed deeply. The cradle stopped on its own, as if something invisible had understood it was no longer necessary to keep moving. Eleanor walked to it with soft steps, touched the edge with her hand, and closed her eyes for an instant. "It's done," she whispered. "Rest." Arthur approached. "What does that mean? That what remained here is leaving? Your son?" Eleanor didn't answer. She took a blanket hanging from the edge and folded it carefully. "My lord, there are things that aren't explained. Only bid farewell." He observed the scene with respect. For the first time since he met her, Eleanor seemed at peace. "And now what will you do?" he asked. "Go on. I don't know where to, but go on." They went down together to the living room. She sat in front of the fire, and Arthur imitated her. "How can you be so calm?" he asked. "Because the worst has passed." "And what was the worst?" "Waiting every night for the silence to return something to me." Arthur leaned back. "I know what that is." "Yes, I saw it from the first day." They stayed quiet. The fire illuminated both their faces. "Why didn't you tell me before that you had a son?" he asked. "Because I didn't want your pity." "You don't have it, only respect." "Then that is already more than I expected." Arthur smiled. "You didn't come here to die, did you?" "No, I came to remember without anyone forbidding me." She looked at him. "And you?" "I came to hide." "From what?" "From me." Eleanor nodded slowly. "Then we are two fugitives. Perhaps that's why fate crossed us." "Don't say it like that. It sounds like a promise." "And if it were? Then you would be lying." Arthur laughed softly. "I don't know how to lie about something like this." Eleanor got up and placed the blanket on her lap. "You should sleep a little." "I don't want to close my eyes. If I do, I feel all this disappears." "Nothing disappears if one remembers it well." Arthur watched her, fascinated by the serenity in her voice. "You don't fear being left alone again." "Loneliness isn't scary when you know it by name." Silence filled everything again. Only the wood creaking was heard. Arthur thought of the burnt letter, the still cradle, the clean air entering through the cracks. Something inside him moved, a small, warm hope. "Eleanor," he said in a low voice, "there is something I don't understand." "Say it. If your son died so long ago, why did you feel him so close still?" "Because I didn't know how to let him go. And now I do, because someone else heard him with me." She looked up. Arthur understood she was serious. It wasn't a poetic phrase. It was truth. From that night on, the atmosphere in the house changed. There were no more whispers or footsteps. The air was clearer. Eleanor began opening the windows during the day. Arthur noticed she no longer dressed in black, but in light gray. "You have changed," he said one morning. "Not that much." "Yes, you smile more. You cough less. Then we both improve, or we both pretend better." Arthur burst out laughing. "I don't care which it feels good." While she gathered wood, he observed her. There was in her a simple elegance, a quiet strength. For the first time in years, Arthur felt the impulse to write not about his sickness, but about someone else. Well, that afternoon she surprised him with the notebook open. "What are you writing?" she asked. "Things I don't know how to say out loud." "That sounds dangerous." "Sometimes writing is the only way to breathe." "And what do you breathe when you write? You?" Eleanor looked at him, not knowing whether to laugh or get angry. "Don't talk nonsense." "It's not nonsense. I am a country woman, a widow with no name to offer you. And I a sick count with no life to offer you. We are even." She shook her head. "Don't look for romance where there is only gratitude. And if gratitude also turned into something else, then you will learn that love isn't begged for." Arthur lowered his gaze. "I'm not begging for it. I'm just trying to understand what is happening to me." "What is happening to you is called habit. It's been a long time since you had anyone close. And you also got used to not feeling." "Yes, and I prefer to stay that way." Several days passed without touching the subject. Arthur improved slowly, could walk further, helped Eleanor with the sheep, even laughed. One afternoon, while the sun went down behind the hills, he saw her stop by the grave behind the cabin. He approached slowly. "Is it him?" he asked. Yes. Do you talk to him sometimes? And he answers always, in some way. Arthur kept silent. Can I stay a moment? If you want. She stepped aside, leaving him in front of the simple cross. Arthur bowed his head. I didn't know him, he murmured, but his mother has the strongest heart of anyone I have seen. Maybe that's why she is still here. Eleanor watched him from behind without saying anything. When they returned to the house, something in her attitude had changed. That night, while they dined, she spoke. I didn't expect you to say that. What thing? That my heart is strong. It is his. Sometimes I feel it broke into 1,000 pieces. Maybe that's why it beats so strong, because it needs to make noise not to fall apart. Eleanor let out a brief laugh. You speak as if you still believed in something. I'm starting to. In what? In the possibility of living again. She looked at him for a long time. Don't play with me, Arthur. I'm not. Don't look at me like that. Then stop being so close. Eleanor looked away, blushing. I need air, she said, getting up. Arthur followed her to the door. Don't go far. Night falls. I don't fear the darkness. I do. When you leave, everything seems empty again. She stopped with her back to him. Don't say that. I think it. She didn't turn. She walked toward the creek. Arthur stayed observing her silhouette disappear among the shadows. That night he didn't sleep. He thought of her, of the lost son, of his own sickness. His chest no longer hurt like before, but his mind burned. The next morning, Eleanor woke him with news. A messenger arrived from the village. He brought this. It was a letter with the seal of London. Arthur opened it with trembling hands. The sender was Dr. Whitmore, his trusted doctor. He read in silence. What does it say? She asked. Yeah, it says my sickness wasn't what they thought, that there is a treatment if I return. Eleanor looked at him in silence. Then you must go. I'm not sure. What do you mean, no? It's your life. Life isn't chosen alone. She crossed her arms. I won't allow you to stay here waiting to die. I didn't come for that anymore. Then go and get cured. And leave you? I am not part of your duty, my lord. Arthur got up, furious with himself. Don't speak as if it didn't matter, because it does matter. Don't be confused. What we have here doesn't exist beyond these walls. Arthur looked at her, hurt. And what we have shared was company. That is all. Her voice was firm, but her eyes trembled. You lie, he said. I have no reason to. Yes, you do. You are afraid. Eleanor looked away. Fear is the only thing keeping me sane. Arthur sighed. Maybe fear also kills, if one lets it grow. Then don't stay to see it. She left the house and left him alone with the letter in his hands. Arthur read it again and again. He could save himself. He could live. But for what if the only thing that gave it meaning was there? He found her later by the creek, looking at the water. Don't hide, he said. I'm not hiding, I'm just thinking. About what? That perhaps fate was more generous with you than with me. Fate owes us nothing, but it teaches us, even if it hurts. Arthur approached a step. If I return to London, what will become of you? I will stay alive as always. And if I don't want to return, then I will have to bury you next to my son. Arthur looked at her and knew there was no right answer. The wind blew between them, dragging leaves and cold. Eleanor looked up. Don't look at me like that. I can't help it. Then go before I can't let you go. Arthur didn't move. She looked at him, desperate to hide what she felt. Please, she said with a trembling voice, don't force me to lose again. And in that instant, he understood she had said it unintentionally, that in that plea there was love, fear, and truth. He approached a little more, but before being able to touch her, she stepped on back. Go, she repeated, almost voiceless, before it's too late. Arthur didn't move. Eleanor's voice kept floating in the air, weak but firm. The wind agitated her hair and skirt, and she seemed part of the landscape, part of that mountain that refused to let her go. I can't go, he said finally. You must. I can't. Why not? Arthur lowered his gaze. Because for the first time in years, I want to live. And that started here. Eleanor observed him in silence. Her eyes were reddened. Living doesn't mean staying where one bleeds. But you cured me. I didn't cure you. You cured yourself because you decided to look at life again. And if I decide to look at it through you, what is wrong with that? Everything, she replied, because I have nothing else to offer you. Arthur took a step. I ask nothing of you, only that you don't push me away. Don't force me to repeat it, she said, trembling. I can't. The Count noticed something in her breaking, as if holding back the words hurt more than pronouncing them. Then this was an illusion. It was winter, she whispered. And winters don't last. He turned frustrated. Why do you insist on pushing me into the void? Because I refuse to see another man die in my arms. Arthur felt a blow to the chest. He understood her. She wasn't pushing him away out of pride, but out of fear. Fear of seeing death up close again. He walked to the creek and put his hands in the freezing water. I am not going to die, Eleanor. No, you can't assure that like that. Nor can you assure it of yourself. I don't need to. My life no longer depends on anyone. Mine does. She pressed her lips together. Don't say that. It's the truth. You taught me to breathe again. Eleanor looked at him fixedly. Then breathe on your own. They returned to the cabin without saying a word. The silence between them was unbearable. Arthur sat by the fire and held the doctor's letter. He read it several times until the letters mixed together. Eleanor approached with a damp cloth. Let me see your fever. I don't have a fever. Yes, you do. You are pale. I'm tired of obeying you. She smiled barely. Then for once, do what you want. Arthur looked up. What I want is to stay. And what I want is to see you leave this house alive. He closed his eyes. Don't ask me. I'm not asking. I'm ordering you. Arthur let out a brief laugh. You aren't my mistress. And yet you obey me more than your doctor. The silence lengthened. Eleanor removed the cloth and stayed in front of him. Leave when the messenger returns. I will tell him to prepare the carriage. No. Yes, Eleanor. Don't make it harder. Arthur stood up unsteadily. Do you know what you ask of me? Yes, that you live. And you ask me while killing me in another way. You do that yourself. She turned to go, but Arthur took her hand. Don't leave me like this. Eleanor stopped. What more do you want from me? A truth. You already had yours. Not all of it. Say you don't love me. If that is what you feel, I can't. Then say it. She looked him in the eyes, trembling. Because if I say it, I won't let you go. Arthur released her. Then say it anyway. Eleanor breathed deep, but didn't pronounce a word. She went out to the hallway and closed the door with force. Arthur fell into the chair, exhausted. The fire went out slowly. That night, sleep brought him fever. He dreamed of his brother, of London, of the child in the cradle. When he woke up, Eleanor was asleep in the armchair, with her head resting on her arm. Arthur observed her for a long time. Her face was calm, as if at last she rested. He moved a lock of hair from her face and his fingers brushed her skin. Eleanor woke up. What are you doing? Nothing. Don't lie. I was just looking at you. That isn't nothing. It is for me. She sat up. You should rest. I can't sleep if you are so close. Then I will move away. She got up, but Arthur stopped her gently. Don't do it, Arthur. This can't be. It already is. The tone of his voice was so serene she didn't know how to respond. They stood face to face, so close the fire projected a single shadow. Why do you insist? She asked. Because I don't want to forget what it feels like to be alive. And you think I can give you that? You already did. Eleanor looked away. I don't want to be your cure. You aren't. You are my reason. She bit her lip. And if you die, then I will have gone, knowing there existed something worth staying for. Their breathing mixed. Eleanor wanted to speak, but couldn't. She moved away slowly with trembling hands. Don't make it harder, she said before disappearing down the hallway. Arthur let her go. The fire consumed itself. Outside, the wind brought the sound of a storm approaching. During the next day, neither of the two spoke. Eleanor avoided his gaze. Arthur pretended to read, though he didn't turn a single page. The sky covered with clouds. In the afternoon, while she put away the water buckets, Arthur felt a sharp pain in his chest. He doubled over, leaning on the table. Eleanor ran to him. Arthur, no, I can't. Breathe, please. She helped him lie down by the fire. Her hands trembled. I'm going for help. No, he said with difficulty. I don't want you to leave. Don't talk nonsense, Eleanor. If I go, I won't make it. Then stay here. She knelt beside him, holding his head. Look at me. I am here. Breathe with me. Arthur followed her slow, painful rhythm. Like that. Don't let me go, she said, squeezing his hand. Don't you dare leave me now. The attack lasted a few minutes. When it passed, Arthur was exhausted. She wiped his sweat and covered him with a blanket. You see what you do, she said with a broken voice. If you die here, I will never forgive you. Arthur smiled weakly. Then I have to live. Yes, you have to. She got up, furious and trembling. You don't understand anything. Explain to me. I can't lose another man. Do you understand? Not anymore. I am not him, but I would die anyway. Arthur tried to sit up, but she stopped him. Don't move, Eleanor. Look at me. She did. I am alive because you exist, he said. And I breathe because you don't die, she replied with a thread of voice. They looked at each other, trapped in a silence that burned. Eleanor lowered her head. This can't continue. It already started. It won't end as soon as the sun comes out. Arthur took her hand. Promise me something. I can't promise you anything. Promise me that if I heal, you won't disappear. I don't know what will happen. Just promise it. She looked at him with held-back tears. All right, I promise. The rest of the night passed in calm. Arthur slept. Eleanor stayed awake, watching his breathing. Every time he coughed, she squeezed his hand tightly. At dawn, the sky cleared. Arthur woke up weak, but alive. Eleanor prepared tea. Are you better? Thanks to you. Don't thank me, I did it for me. Arthur drank a sip and observed her. Don't lie to yourself. I did it because I don't want winter to rob me of someone else. He smiled. Then I will survive, even if only to prove you right. I hope so, and when you do, I will ask you something. What thing? That you let me stay. Eleanor let out a soft, tired laugh. You are already delirious again. I am saner than ever. She shook her head. Living doesn't mean staying. No, but staying can mean starting to live. Eleanor looked at him. Her eyes shone with something she didn't want to name. Don't make me promises, just one. No, I don't want to hear it. Then I keep it until you are ready. They spent the rest of the day in silence. Arthur wrote in his notebook. Eleanor baked bread. The atmosphere had something new, lighter but also more fragile. At nightfall, while she closed the windows, he spoke from the armchair. Eleanor, what's wrong? I don't know how much time I have left, but if I get to live, I will do it for you. She looked at him for a long time with her hand on the bolt. Don't say that. I say it because it's true. You don't know what you are saying. Yes, I know. She released the latch and approached slowly. If you live, I will make you stay, only to prove you can do it without me. And if I can't, then I will learn to say goodbye well. Arthur smiled weakly. I wouldn't know how to leave you. I would, she said, although her voice betrayed the tremor. The fire went out. The house was left in gloom. Outside, the wind brought the sound of the river and the distant song of an owl. Eleanor got up. I'm going to get more wood. Arthur stopped her with his gaze. Don't be long. She nodded. When she went out, the wind hit the door with force. Arthur stayed listening to her footsteps move away. Then silence returned. Only this time among the shadows, a new whisper rose inside the house. Arthur Hawthorne, do not let her go. Arthur stood motionless. The voice had sounded so clear, so close that his heart stopped for an instant. He got up from the armchair clumsily, looking around. There was no one. The fire was still lit, but the air inside the house had cooled suddenly. Who said that? He asked with ragged breathing. Silence was his only answer. He walked to the door but didn't dare go out. The wind hit with force and the sound of branches crashing against each other made everything seem alive. Eleanor returned a few minutes later, carrying wood. What's wrong? She asked, seeing him pale. Nothing. I thought I heard something. The wind again. I've told you it likes to play with the house. It wasn't the wind. Then what? Arthur observed her a moment before answering. Your son. She looked at him with a mix of pain and exhaustion. Don't start. I heard him. Eleanor didn't hear him. You imagine it. He didn't say my name. Eleanor dropped the wood by the fire. And what else did he say? She asked almost in a whisper. That I shouldn't let you go. The silence that followed was so deep, Arthur heard the beat of his own heart. Eleanor approached slowly with eyes fixed on him. Don't say that again. Why? Because I don't want to believe it. Arthur felt the tension in his chest mixed with an emotion he didn't know how to name. Maybe not everything that happens here is pain. You don't understand. What is in this house is indistinguishable from pain. Then let me distinguish it. Eleanor looked at him with pressed lips. Don't speak of what you don't know. I know it. I have felt it. Not yours, but mine, yes. They aren't the same. Pain isn't measured. Eleanor, it is only shared. She turned around, walking away from him. Stop trying to save me. I'm not trying to save you. I just want you to stop hiding. Eleanor let out a bitter laugh. And what do you want me to do? Forget? No, remember without punishing yourself. She looked at him, and for the first time her gaze wasn't hard but vulnerable. You don't know what it is to see those you love die. I know. No, like this. Yes, like this, said Arthur firmly. My brother died in my arms. I promised him I would live for both of us, and look at me. I only came here to wait for him. Eleanor lowered her head. Don't speak like that. Why not? Because if I listen to you, I won't be able to keep seeing you leave. Arthur took a step. Then don't see me leave. She looked at him with held-back tears. If you stay, I won't know how to return to being who I was. Then be another. Eleanor closed her eyes. Tears rolled without her being able to stop them. Arthur raised a hand, hesitated an instant, and then brushed her face. She didn't move away. The silence filled with a new warmth distinct from the fire. Arthur spoke with a low voice. I don't want to leave, Eleanor. You shouldn't have come. Maybe fate knew what it was doing. Don't mention fate. It is cruel. Only when one fears it. She looked at him and breathed deeply. You can't stay here. This house no longer has ghosts. Are you sure? That's because you let them go. Eleanor sat by the fire. I don't know whether to believe you or fear you. Believe me. The fire crackled. Arthur knelt in front of her. When they brought me this letter, he said, showing the doctor's paper, I thought it was a cruel joke, but now I think it wasn't the luck that brought me here. It was a second chance. And what will you do with it? I will live it with you. Eleanor sighed, exhausted. Don't speak of impossible things. We are already living them. She smiled with sadness. You cling to hope like someone clinging to a dream, and you to guilt like someone clinging to a cross. Eleanor looked away. Don't compare me with your prayers. I don't, but maybe both of us were waiting for the same thing, for someone to find us before the end. She got up suddenly. Don't continue, Arthur. Why not? Because I don't want to hear you say what I will miss later. He also got up. I won't say it if you promise me to stay. It doesn't depend on me. Then on whom? On life, and yours calls you from London. Arthur took her by the arm without force, but with tenderness. And if I refuse to listen to it, then you will die here. I don't care. I do. The tone of her voice disarmed him. Wait, he asked. Why? Because I love you. There, she said finally, almost shouting. The confession fell like thunder between them. Arthur didn't answer, just looked at her. Eleanor breathed with difficulty, as if the words weighed on her. Is that what you wanted to hear? She asked. Well, there you have it. Arthur took a step, took her hands. Yes, but not like this. I don't know how to say it any other way. Then let me feel it. Eleanor wanted to move away but couldn't. The closeness between them was inevitable. Arthur's eyes sought hers and hers, an excuse to look elsewhere. She didn't find it. I can't, Arthur, she whispered. Yes, you can. I'm afraid. Me too. She closed her eyes and for a second time stopped. The wind, the fire, the sound of the forest, everything seemed to suspend. Arthur rested his forehead on hers. I'm not going to ask you for anything, he said. I just want you to let me stay until you decide to throw me out. Eleanor separated slowly. You don't need my permission. Yes, I do, because this house is yours, your heart too. She looked at him with a mix of love and resignation. Then stay if that makes you breathe, but don't ask me to be your motive. Arthur smiled barely. Too late. You already are. Eleanor sat down again exhausted. I don't know what to do with you. Nothing, just let the winter pass. That night, for the first time, they slept peacefully. The wind brought no whispers, nor did the cradle move. The silence was real, as if at last the house had released its last weight. In the morning, Arthur woke up with a new sensation. Warmth. Eleanor was outside feeding the sheep. The sun shone weak, but for the first time in weeks, it wasn't raining. He went out to meet her. Look, she said, smiling. Winter surrenders, or we defeated it. Don't rush, my lord. There is much left to claim victory. I am no longer my lord, just a man trying not to get lost again. Eleanor looked at him amused. You lack practice. You can teach me. They spent the morning working together. Arthur fatigued quickly, but his cough was lighter. Eleanor watched him without saying it, like someone fearing a breath might escape her. When he staggered, she ran to hold him. I told you to rest. I don't want to rest. I want to feel useful. I don't need help. It's not for you, it's for Maidkuni. She looked at him seriously. And if you get sick again, then you will have to take care of me. Eleanor laughed. Don't give me more work than I already have. Then don't leave me alone. Arthur extended his hand. She hesitated, but took it. The contact was brief, but sufficient. The air between them changed. It was no longer fear or pity. It was something more serene, clearer. At late afternoon, a carriage appeared on the road. It was the doctor from London. Arthur recognized him immediately. Who is it? Asked Eleanor. My doctor. I didn't expect to see him so soon. The doctor got down from the carriage with a smile. My lord, it seems your health improves. By miracle, perhaps, or by company, replied the doctor, looking at Eleanor with courtesy. She bowed her head. Arthur nodded. I don't know what to tell you. Tell me only if you wish to return with me. Arthur hesitated. Eleanor lowered her gaze. You have to think about it well, said the doctor. If we continue with the treatment in London, you can recover completely. Arthur looked at Eleanor. And if I stay here? The climate won't help you, but it is your decision. Eleanor took a step back. You must go, she said without looking at him. Don't spoil what you achieved. Arthur felt a knot in his throat. And you? I am not part of your cure. The doctor observed them in silence, understanding more than was said. Arthur breathed deeply. I want to think about it one more day. Of course, replied the doctor. I will stay in the village. I will return tomorrow. When the carriage moved away, silence fell again. Eleanor was by the porch with arms crossed. Tomorrow you will go. I haven't decided. You already decided, you just don't want to admit it. And if I don't go, then you will make me remind you what it means to lose. Arthur looked at her with shining eyes. Don't say goodbye yet. I am not the one doing it. It is life. That night, the fire burned strong. Outside, the snow began to melt. Arthur observed her in silence without saying a word. Eleanor was sitting in front of the window with a lost gaze. Time stopped again. Then, without knowing why, Arthur got up, walked toward her, and spoke with a firm voice. If I stay, it won't be out of fear. It will be because what I feel here is stronger than any sickness. Eleanor turned slowly. Don't say that. Wait, because if you say it, I won't be able to let you leave. Arthur took one more step. Then don't do it. The air seemed to hold its breath. Eleanor looked at him without blinking. Arthur raised a hand, brushed her cheek, and let the silence say it all. She closed her eyes for an instant, feeling winter ending with that touch, and just when she opened her mouth to respond, a knock sounded on the door. Eleanor jumped. Arthur too. The knock repeated. Dry. Urgent. They looked at each other without speaking. No one had knocked on that door for months. Eleanor was the first to move. She walked slowly with a racing heart and opened it. The doctor was on the threshold with his cape soaked by rain. Excuse the hour, he said, but the carriage had a problem on the bridge. I couldn't return to the village. Eleanor breathed relieved. Come in, doctor. There is a fire lit. Arthur approached. Everything all right? Yes, my lord, but the road is impassable. I will have to spend the night here if it doesn't bother you. Of course not. Eleanor brought a blanket and a cup of tea. The doctor received it with a polite smile. Thank you, madam. I am no one's madam, she said without looking at the count. Arthur pretended not to hear. The doctor drank a sip and settled in front of the fire. My lord, I have observed you since I arrived. You are better. Your color changed and the cough has reduced. If you allow me to say it, it is a remarkable case. Arthur nodded. I notice it. What your body needed wasn't just medicine. Sometimes the soul decides for us. Eleanor lowered her eyes. The doctor continued. If we return to London, I have hopes of seeing you completely recovered in a few months. And if I stay, asked Arthur, maybe you recover anyway, but with risk. Here there are no resources, and if you worsen, Eleanor stood up. Excuse me, I'm going to prepare the guest room. Arthur followed her with his gaze until losing her down the hallway. Then he turned to the doctor. What would you do, doctor? I would return. Life always offers opportunities when one decides to take them. And if those opportunities aren't where one was born, the doctor smiled, then you will have to take them with you. That night, Arthur didn't sleep. He heard the rain hit the roof and the sound of soft footsteps in the hallway. Eleanor had stayed awake. The next morning, the doctor departed early. The road was still wet, but passable. Before leaving, he shook Arthur's hand. Think about it, my lord. There is no shame in choosing life. Arthur nodded. I will. Eleanor said nothing while watching him leave. Only when the carriage disappeared among the trees did she speak. He is right. You must go. And you? I will stay. And if I ask you to come with me, I can't. Why? Because my place is here. Arthur looked at her, trying to read in her eyes something that contradicted him. You don't have to stay out of guilt. I don't stay out of guilt. I stay because this place belongs to me as much as the air I breathe. He sighed. I don't want to leave you, and I don't want to see you die. I suppose we both lose. During the following days, the weather improved, the hills filled with light mist and birds. Arthur walked more, breathed better, but his mood worsened. Eleanor noticed. You can't go on like this, she said one afternoon while gathering clothes from the line. Neither in London nor here will you be able to live if you don't decide to do so. I try. It doesn't seem like it, because it's hard for me to say goodbye. Then don't do it. Arthur looked at her surprised. What do you mean? There is no need to say goodbye if one knows how to return. He smiled with sadness. And you will wait for me? I don't promise what I don't know how to keep. The day he had to leave arrived with a clear sky. Arthur packed few things in his suitcase, the doctor's letter, his notebook, and a dried flower Eleanor had left one morning on his teacup. She helped him close the door. The carriage will pass at noon, she said. I know. Did you pack your medicines? Yes. And your coat, too. Silence occupied the house again. Eleanor prepared tea and served it without speaking. Do you remember the first time you entered here? She asked suddenly. Yes, I thought you were a ghost, and I thought you were an unbearable man. Arthur laughed softly. You weren't wrong. Neither were you. She smiled, but her eyes shone. I will tell you something, said Arthur. I came here to die, but now I leave so as not to. That is good. Yes, but leaving you isn't. I also learned something, she said, that I can't live in mourning forever. Arthur took her hand. Then we both changed. Yes. The sound of a carriage broke the moment. Eleanor got up and breathed deep. It's time. Arthur stood up, slowly. He took his suitcase and walked to the door. She accompanied him outside. The driver waited for him with hat in hand. My lord, the roads are clean. You will arrive at the station before nightfall. Arthur nodded. He turned toward Eleanor. If I could promise you something, what would it be? That you don't forget what you learned here. I couldn't forget it even if I wanted to. Then don't say goodbye. He looked at her in silence with a tight throat. Can I write to you? No. Why? Because if you write to me, I will wait for you, and I don't want to do that. Arthur leaned in and took her hand, pressing it gently. Thank you. Please live. I will try. He got into the carriage. Eleanor stayed on the road motionless while the wheels moved away, raising dust. The wind blew, and for a moment she thought she heard a childish voice saying something among the trees. She smiled, knowing the place finally rested. Days passed, winter left, and the field bloomed. Eleanor returned to her routine. She worked in the garden, visited the hills, spoke with the village children who came for herbs. But at night, when the wind hit the windows, she thought of him, not with sadness, but with calm. One afternoon, while cutting branches, a young man from the village arrived with a letter. "They left it at the station for you, Mrs. Whitaker," he said. She frowned. "Are you sure?" "Yes, it has your name." She took the envelope. It had no sender. She opened it with trembling hands. "Eleanor, I live. I am healing. London isn't as gray as I remembered, but it still doesn't seem like home. I don't know if I did right by leaving, but I carry with me something that here no one can give me. Reason. If one day the mountains let you go, look for the garden behind my house in Mayfair. I planted lavender, the same that your cabin smelled of. Arthur." Eleanor folded the letter and put it in her pocket. She didn't cry. She just smiled. "Silly Count," she murmured. "I said not to write." Summer came and went. The field flowers grew in abundance. Eleanor opened the windows every morning, letting the sun in. Sometimes she talked to herself, as if the house still had ears. "You see, William," she said, looking at her son's portrait. "The Count lives, and so do I." Autumn brought new rains. One morning, while gathering wood, she saw a carriage stop at the foot of the hill. Her heart jumped. The figure that got down was tall, thinner, but unmistakable. Arthur advanced slowly, leaning on his cane. "I said I would return if I managed to live," he said when he was in front of her. Eleanor covered her mouth with her hands. "It can't be." "It is." The wind lifted the leaves between them. Arthur smiled with clear eyes and a serene face. "I came to pay a promise," he said. "Which one?" "That of staying if life allowed me." Eleanor couldn't answer. She approached slowly until their hands touched. Arthur breathed deep. "I didn't come to die anymore, Eleanor. I came to live with you." She laughed through tears. "And I swore I wouldn't wait for you. You didn't listen to me." "I never do." They embraced under the gray sky. There was no fear or pain, only a shared silence. The house, for the first time in years, seemed full of life. They spent the rest of the day together walking among the fields, talking about simple things, the village, the weather, the future. At nightfall, they lit the fire. Eleanor prepared tea and Arthur, sitting in front of her, wrote something in his notebook. "What are you noting now?" she asked. "The end of my diary." "And how does it end?" Arthur looked up and smiled. "With you." Eleanor sighed. "I never imagined a man who came to could fill so much space. And I never imagined a woman who lived among ghosts would give me back my life." She extended her hand and put it over his. "Winter won't return the same." "No, nor us either." They stayed in silence, listening to the crackle of the fire. Arthur took his cup and toasted. "To those of us still here. And to those who left us their light," she added. Outside, the rain began to fall again, soft as a blessing. Arthur looked at her with tenderness. "What will we do tomorrow?" Eleanor smiled. "Whatever life does." The fire illuminated their faces. The house breathed calm, without echoes, without fear, without shadows. Arthur leaned a little more toward her, took her hand and squeezed it firmly. The silence returned, but it was another. That of peace reached after having lost everything. And just when the fire was extinguishing, a valley bell rang in the distance, announcing something new arriving with the dawn. Dawn arrived soft, without wind, with a clean sky barely tinged with gold. The house smelled of freshly made bread. Arthur woke up with that aroma and the sound of footsteps in the kitchen. He opened his eyes and saw Eleanor's silhouette by the fire, moving with a calm that seemed new to him. "Smells good," he said with a hoarse voice. Eleanor turned and smiled. "I didn't want to wake you. If you do it for that, I will never complain." She laughed and approached with a tray. "Bread, honey, and tea. It's not a count's breakfast, but it's what there is." "It's perfect." "Perfect would be if the tea didn't get cold so fast, and if we shared it better." Eleanor sat in front of him. The morning light entered through the window, painting both their faces with that warm glow, making it seem winter had been just a bad dream. "I can't believe you are here," she said. "Me neither. Sometimes I think the mountain invented me." "If the mountain could invent something, it wouldn't be a stubborn count." Then you invented me. Eleanor looked at him with sweetness. Don't say that. I say it because it's true. They stayed quiet a moment listening to the birds singing. Arthur took her hand on the table. When I was in London, I thought of this house, of you. I thought the memory would fade, but it didn't. I didn't think you would return. Neither did I, but there was a day I woke up. I breathed without pain and knew I had to return. Eleanor squeezed his hand. And you weren't afraid of dying on the way? I was more afraid of staying alive without you. She smiled shyly. You say those things because you learned to speak prettily in London. I don't say them because I learned to speak truthfully here. The silence had become comfortable again, full of that air that only exists between two people who no longer need to explain anything. Arthur drank a sip of tea and then looked at her decisively. Eleanor, what's wrong? I will stay here forever. She observed him calmly, as if measuring the weight of the words. And your title? In London? All that died when I arrived at these hills. You can't renounce your name. I already did. Now I am just Arthur. Eleanor looked at him for a long time and then lowered her eyes. Then Arthur, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? Live it with you. She let out a short, incredulous laugh. Don't say that so fast. I already thought about it too much. If life gave me another chance, I won't spend it in silence. Eleanor got up and approached the window. The sun already shone over the field. It's been years since I heard something like that, she said with a trembling voice. That someone says they want to stay, not out of pity, but out of love. Arthur got up too and went to her. I didn't come out of pity. I came because I can't imagine a tomorrow without seeing you. She turned slowly with wet eyes. And if tomorrow I get tired of you, then it will be a tomorrow closer to paradise. Eleanor laughed, and that laugh disarmed him. Arthur raised his hand, brushed her cheek, and stopped seeking permission. She didn't move away. I'm not afraid anymore, she murmured. Me neither. Arthur hugged her. It wasn't a desperate hug, but full of that calm that arrives when waiting ends. Eleanor rested her head on his shoulder. You took a long time to come, she said, just enough to learn to arrive. They separated only to look into each other's eyes. The silence was so great the world seemed to hold its breath. Arthur smiled. There is something I brought with me. What thing? A promise. He went to his coat, searched in the pocket, and took out a small wooden box. He opened it and showed a simple silver ring. Eleanor looked at him surprised. No. Yes, he said without letting her finish. I don't have a title worth anything anymore, nor a fortune to offer, but I have this, the life I have left, in the hands I want to be yours. She took a step back with held-back tears. Arthur, no. I don't know what to say. Say yes. Eleanor brought her hands to her face. I can't believe it. Believe it. You gave me back my soul, and now I want to give you my name, not as a count, but as a man. She looked at him trembling. I don't need a name. I do need yours. The silence extended. Only the wind hitting the window was heard. Eleanor lowered her hands and looked at him. If I say yes, promise me never to leave again. I swear. Eleanor breathed deep, took a step and extended her hand. Then yes, Arthur. Yes. He laughed incredulous and took her in his arms. She cried against his chest, laughing too. I didn't think I would feel something like this again. Nor I. The ring shone weakly under the dawn light. Arthur slid it onto her finger delicately. Now I can die peacefully, he joked. Don't even say it, she replied, giving him a soft hit on the shoulder. I don't want to bury you again. Then you will have to take care of me a lot. And you me. They spent the day laughing, walking through the field, remembering the past months as if they had been a distant dream. Arthur showed her the lavender flowers growing near the creek. I planted them the first day I arrived. I thought they wouldn't bloom, but look. Eleanor bent down and touched them with her hand. They smell just like the house. I wanted this place to remember you in case one day I was alone again. Eleanor looked at him and smiled with tenderness. You won't be alone anymore. Nor you either. They returned to the cabin before late afternoon fell. Eleanor lit the fire and Arthur prepared tea. When they sat in front of the flames, she rested her head on his shoulder. And now what follows, Untitled Count? Living and teaching you to laugh more often. That isn't taught. Then I will try it every day. She looked up. And if one day you forget, touch my hand and I will remember. They stayed like that quiet, hearing how the fire crackled. Outside, the wind had stopped blowing, the night was clear, and through the window entered flashes of moon. Arthur spoke in a low voice. I never thought love could arrive so late. Sometimes it arrives when one is ready. And if I had found you before, you would have loved me the same, right? She said, smiling. I would have been afraid. Arthur kissed her on the forehead. Then it was the perfect moment. Yes, she whispered, just now. The hours passed without them noticing. The wood consumed itself, and the fire remained in embers. Eleanor closed her eyes drowsy, and Arthur covered her with a blanket. He looked at her for a long time with a full heart. When it dawned again, he found her at the door, looking at the hills. What are you doing awake so early? He asked. I listen to the world breathe. And what does it say? It says we aren't the same anymore. Arthur approached and hugged her from behind. I like what we are now. Me too, you know. I thought about writing about us, but there are no words that reach. Then don't write them, live me. He laughed and kissed her on the cheek. I already do. The sun came out between the clouds. The hills seemed golden. Eleanor breathed deep. I didn't think I would see such a beautiful day again. Me neither, but here we are. They crossed the field together, laughing at nothing. Arthur walked firmer, without coughing, without pain. At the creek, they stopped a moment. Eleanor touched the water with her fingers, cold as the first time he came. But now it doesn't scare me because I don't expect to die. No, now I expect to live long enough to see you grow old by my side. Eleanor looked at him with shining eyes. You always speak like that. Only when I am sure. They returned to the cabin at sunset. Arthur took her hand. Eleanor, do you realize this place is no longer a grave? I know, it's a home. Inside, the fire waited for them. Arthur closed the door, took his notebook, and left it on the table. What are you doing? I finished my story. And how does it end? Arthur smiled, with you telling me you love me again. Eleanor arched an eyebrow, amused. And if I don't say it, then there is no ending. She laughed, walked toward him, and hugged him tight. I love you, Arthur Hawthorne. He kissed her forehead. Now yes, the story can stay here. The night wrapped them serene, without fear, without ghosts. Outside, the lavender grew free under the moon. Inside, the house breathed for the first time like a complete home, with two souls that had found each other when time no longer seemed enough. And while the fire crackled, Arthur whispered, I came to die in these hills, Eleanor, and I ended up learning to live in them. She smiled with her head resting on his chest. And I, who lived surrounded by shadows, ended up finding the light in you. He caressed her hair, feeling how the silence filled with promises. Then there is nothing more to say. No, just stay. The rain began to fall soft, like a memory saying goodbye. Arthur held her closer, breathing her name. Eleanor looked up, looked him in the eyes, and said in a whisper that seemed eternal, Yes, Arthur, we stay. Thank you very much for listening to this story until the end. We hope it moved you as much as it did us telling it. We would love to know your opinion. Leave us a comment telling us where you are listening from and what you like the most. Rate this story from 0 to 10. What grade do you give it? If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and leave a like as a show of support. That motivates us a lot to continue creating and sharing more stories full of emotions and lessons. And before saying goodbye, we want to remind you that on the final screen, a recommendation for another exciting and charming story will appear. If you want to enjoy it, just click on the video. Thank you very much again for being here and see you in the next story.